Dude, it's one of those trashy like news things that just
We
post stuff.
we are a trashy news thing that just posts stuff.
We,
I don't know where you've been.
I,
Welcome
oh,
back to the
I
Talking
meant
Average
more
Fitness
trashy.
podcast, everybody.
We should be more trashy. We just
More
like
trashy. Oh,
I don't
well,
know what's Justin Bieber's relationship status. What's let's
does Justin Bieber
pop
CrossFit?
culture.
I don't think he CrossFits.
He
Just
should.
interview random people in the street. Do you think Justin Bieber CrossFits? Fuck no. Um,
It'd be
I
like
forgot what the
those
hell we
like
were doing.
the YouTube shows where people just run up and there's like, hey, here, grab a card, and it's like one of those like pop up magic things. We do
Yes,
that except for fitness. We throw a kettlebell at someone. Hey, do a kettlebell swing.
and just yeet it at a human being and watch, a
Yeah.
proportional number of
Well,
human beings
have you
literally
seen
like fail.
just snap in half?
Yes.
Um, well, have you seen the ones where they like I don't know how they make this basketball hoop fucking portable, but it's like a group of people that they just like they're carrying a basketball hoop and they just like stick it up and throw a ball at someone and they're expecting the person to catch the ball and then shoot it. And if they
Yeah.
make it, they lose their minds whole thing. If they miss it,
Right.
then whatever.
Yeah.
And then there are some people that like they'll throw the ball and I watch someone like they get thrown the ball to shoot it, they catch it, turned around and punted it the other way. And I was like, oh, oh man. All right. That person who pissed in your Wheaties this morning. Jesus. That was, but we could do something like that, but just with a kettlebell or like a medicine ball.
I, I want to say right now that the voice you're hearing describing all of these things is Kevin McCarthy and not Sam Burns. I'm Sam Burns.
If
I'm
they
not
can't
the
tell us
guy.
apart, if they can't tell us apart by now,
I'm the one who's not going to throw a kettlebell at you. I can't speak for
uh,
Kevin, apparently.
Kevin's,
Um,
he can't speak for me because haven't thrown a kettlebell at someone, but I have been known to swap people's weights out mid workout when they're
mm,
like out on a run or something.
right.
Um, that's the best when you like had one of our members, Tracy, doing kettlebell swings, and I was like, I want you to use a heavy one. I think we can
Yeah.
go heavier than 53. We're just having a Russian swing. You can go heavier. Like,
Yep.
I don't know, 53 I got. I'm like, okay, great. So she takes off with she does the 53, does the first round. She goes out on her to her run. And there's a group of people that like have some injuries and stuff. So they're on like a bike.
Yeah.
And I walk over, I grab Tracy's kettlebell, the 53 pounder. I put it back on the shelf. I grab a 70 pounder, put it back, and I chalked the handle the same way she had it so she wouldn't notice. She comes back in the second round. She gets 10 swings in, puts it down, and goes, this feels heavy. I'm like, don't worry about it. And of
Yeah.
course, the bike people are just kind of snickering, and I'm just like, shh, don't say anything. She's fine.
Mhm.
So she finishes the whole workout, all good to go. She finishes, she goes to pick it up and put it away, and she goes, what the hell? This is 7. I'm like, yeah, I told you could do it. I'm like, surprise.
Oh, the human mind, the capacity for self delusion that the human possesses is amazing.
Oh yeah,
I I'll never forget. So I took Rob Orlando's strongman course down in Connecticut. It was a great
amazing.
seminar, and
Did
he
you just
showed us
hold
this
a
video, and like
stone the entire time?
yeah, like stones and tires and yokes and fucking everything. It's so much fun. Like if you get a chance, you're on the East Coast, please take that seminar. And he's got this video on his phone, and there's this woman who's flipping a big ass tire,
Yep.
and she's like, I can't do this. Can you help me? He's like, yeah, sure, absolutely. And so he ducks in beside her, and the
Mhm.
camera is like profile to them, and so
Right.
she muckles onto that son of a bitch. She starts to move, and his hand is never touching the tire the whole time.
It's just there.
It's just like
Yeah.
spirit fingers like wiggling close to it. And
Yeah.
she flips it over. She's like, "Oh, awesome, thanks." Fist bump, and he's like, "Yeah, good job." Like never,
Yeah.
never. I don't know if she ever knew, but we all know.
Yeah.
Um, okay, so I swear to God, we actually had a plan when we started this. So there was an interesting piece of content that was put out. I feel like a lot of things that come across the Sevon podcast are interesting pieces of content.
Oh
So
yeah.
many things.
Were you still a part of CrossFit One Nation when he shredded us for the like masks thing during COVID?
No,
Oh
literally
my
one
God,
nation.
you weren't. Yeah. So, oh my gosh. So this is the only reason that I'd like. Um, this is gonna sound real bad. Like I know who Sevon is because he had done media work for CrossFit. So, like I knew that he exists
Yeah,
somewhere in the
of
CrossFit
course.
space. As CrossFit's going through their changeover, they fire the whole media staff. I'm like, Sevon is somewhere in the ether. He's just out in the void doing whatever. I didn't know that he had a podcast. until someone brought it to our attention during the wildness that was COVID.
Yeah.
It was when the state of Massachusetts was, I don't think it ever actually ended up happening, but they were like, hey, we're going to require people to show proof of vaccination to go
It was the
anywhere.
city.
Like if
It was the city of Boston.
okay, that's what it was.
Yeah,
City of
yeah.
Boston. So we had a gym within the city lines of Boston. So
Yeah.
that was wild, trying to manage multiple locations where like one has this set of rules, one has a different set of rules.
Yeah.
That was a time. Anyways, they were going to require proof of, you had to show your like COVID vaccine card if you wanted to go into a building anywhere. And that was going to be the rule.
Yeah.
And so in preparation for that, we're like getting people's, you know, COVID vaccination cards like on file. We're like putting it like on file. We had found a way to attach it onto their profile, like in Tribe, so we could see it. And so we're in the process of doing that. And so we had put out as an announcement, like an Instagram post that was like, hey, per the city of Boston's requirements, this is what we have to do. Yeah. Like reach out to your coach, reach out to us. Like, we'll work with you guys to try and like, you know, go through this process, but we got as big a head start on it as possible because we're like, there's no way this goes smoothly. So we put that Instagram post out there, and on the Sevan podcast, he had that Instagram post. Oh, dear. And he sat there and he was like, gyms like this are the fucking problem. Like, you're taking away people's rights and liberties and America and Constitution, and fuck these guys. And I don't understand how a gym that's owned by James and Austin and these guys that are awesome can go through with this because it's absolute horseshit. And he starts going. And I watched it. I was like, oh my God. And so, and I don't know if he read whatever, that's like, this wasn't the gym's choice. Sure. Like if left to our devices, I just want people to work out and be happy. I don't really care what that looks like or, you know, entails. That's the whole thing. But again, it was because we were in the city of Boston, and that was going to be a requirement. Right. And how strictly they enforced it, we didn't know. We can only go with the information we're given. But he had that post up on his podcast, and he starts going. And whoever he had as guest, they're like, oh yeah, fuck these guys, the whole thing. So, you know, I'm just going to I'm not a massive fan of the Sevan podcast post that moment. I didn't have much feelings about it prior to, because I didn't know it existed. But that is my one and only experience with the Sevan podcast, where they were like, screw these guys. I'm like, listen, man, I'm dealing with saran wrapped 2x4s, duct taped to a medicine ball, trying to stay COVID whatever is in the city of Boston. I'm just trying here, man. And I wasn't having it. So anyways, that was your experience. Like, that's my one and only experience with the Sevan podcast prior to the yesterday or 2 days ago when you sent me the clip that we're going to talk about today. Okay. So that's it.
All right. Well, so for context, that's who we're talking about here, right? So I was scrolling through Instagram and I found this clip, and it's an interesting notion, and I presented it to some friends of mine, and they provided me with some interesting commentary. I presented that commentary to Kevin, and I thought it would be an interesting thing to discuss, because if we're going to discuss it, a couple things get uncomfortable real quick, and that's always fun, at least for me, right?
So it can definitely be interesting. Yes,
it can definitely be interesting. Yep. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share this window here. I'm also going to share the audio for the window. So hopefully everybody can hear it and it's not like absolutely deafening. So if that is the case on your end when you're listening or watching this, I apologize in advance. So it's going to come right in, and there are captions here as well. So here we go.
CrossFit needs to do away with all age groups at the games. Get rid of it all. People are there. The audience is there. The money is there to watch the professional athletes.
And get rid of all age groups. Like do them at a different event. Like do the master. Have the masters have their own event.
Their own thing. And not only that, but just do an online competition. Call it, a CrossFit Games online version where it stops at semifinals for them. Right?
For the kids, and then let the masters go somewhere else and do it.
Yeah. It's like, if you want to continue to bring money into the sport, stop wasting money. I'm not saying forget about these people. Like they deserve to figure out who's the fittest, just like anyone else does. But in the realm of business and professional sport, if they can make it individually, they've earned their right to be there. There's other routes for them to figure out, Am I the fittest teenager in the world? Am I the fittest 35-year-old in the world? Get these athletes paid more. Right? And I feel like that is such a simple solution.
Okay. So that's our little piece of audio. Did you hear the audio? It's good
Yes.
on your end? Cool. All right,
Yes, sir.
fantastic. So obviously, like,
Should be good.
yeah, contentious little notion here, right? To effectively at the CrossFit Games do away with and by the way, the person who's speaking is at least per his Instagram handle, Matt Torres, the CEO of Brute Strength. So this is a guy who he's invested in the community to a certain extent in terms of, you know, like from a business standpoint, from a programming standpoint, from a competitive athlete standpoint. So he's not some local yokel who's just like spouting off. He probably has a unique perspective, right?
Mhm.
So his notion is get rid of the age groups. So currently, if you're not up on this, and I'm going to assume that you are, but we're going to go over it. Once you get through the open and you get through quarterfinals and semifinals for professional athletes, you go to, for the individual athletes, you go to the CrossFit Games. After the open, they have the AGOQ, the age group online qualifier. And then, correct me if I'm wrong, please, but the people who do best at the AGOQ go right to the games.
No, this year they added a semifinals for.
They added it. Okay, thank you. So it's a Masters
Yep.
semifinal. It's also for teens, then I would assume.
Yes. Yeah,
Okay,
they have like, so they made it instead of the AGOQ, like just age group online qualifier, which used to qualify you directly to the games.
Yep.
Now that like their season as well goes open, quarterfinals, semifinals, games. The difference is for any age groups, semifinals is also virtual. So they don't
Okay.
have an in-person semifinal. It's a virtual competition as well.
Yep.
And then that qualifies you to the games.
Okay. So similar process as the individuals.
Mhm.
And for anyone who's gone to the games, or even if you've like known a Masters athlete who's gone to the games and you've tried to watch a live stream of that, that's not easy to do. Because
not easy to do. It's
and I feel for those people and their friends and their families.
yes, absolutely.
And I've been fortunate enough to know and to work with a couple Masters athletes. One person who has gone, 3 or 4 times now, Miss Carolyn out of CrossFit Medfield. And that is because the media resources that exist at the CrossFit Games are focused squarely on the elite individual competitors. And so the Masters athletes, they go, but when they're in the stadium, there's, the attendance is not like packed because a lot of those people are someplace else at another event for the elite individuals. They run these things concurrently, right? So while the
have to.
elite, they have to, absolutely.
Yeah, just schedule-wise, you have to.
Yeah, because if you have 80 men, 80 women, and 80 teams, or 40 teams, I'm not sure which.
Sorry. So it's because it's 40. I think this year it's 40 men, 40 women for the elite individuals, and then 30 teams, I think.
Okay.
And then each age group, if I'm not mistaken, it's either 10 or 20. It's an even number.
Okay.
That are at the games for men, women, and the age groups.
Okay. So you've got 120 elite competitors, multiple heats of multiple events, yay, cuts. That's another thing we're going to talk about. And there's a whole other thing. And while they're off doing something, they're doing the run, swim, run event or whatever. Somewhere else on the grounds in Madison are the Masters. And so the people who are watching them are the people who came with them, mostly.
Yep.
And this guy is saying, don't invite them. They don't get to come. They don't get to play, right? And so I shoved this into a chat with some friends of mine. And I have a good friend, Carly. She's verbally made an appearance on this podcast many times. And her response was essentially, well, until CrossFit foots the bill for them getting there, then they shouldn't be able to say, no, you can't go, or, or even like cuts, like you shouldn't be able to cut athletes or anything like that. And like, so now that we've got this thing where it's like, Masters have been a part of the CrossFit Games for I don't even know how long, and we're now to the point where like Sam Briggs is a Masters athlete. James Hobart is
Yep.
a Masters athlete. Dan Bailey is a Masters athlete. Some of these people who are, what I would consider CrossFit's heyday, which
Yep.
already makes me sound old. Like those athletes, the athletes that I fell in love with at the CrossFit Games, they're transitioning into Masters athletes now, right?
Yep.
So with all of that said, what do we think about the idea of just being like, Masters, go bye-bye?
Oh man. So here's the two angles you got to think about this from, right? From a business standpoint for CrossFit. And that's the only lens I'm looking at this through from a business standpoint for CrossFit HQ, the governing body that is putting on the games.
Right. The brand.
It would make so much more financial sense to get rid of any division that's not the elite individuals. And I'm including teams.
Yep.
Because even if you're on the elite teams, and some people enjoy watching that, the sport of CrossFit is so predominantly focused on and driven by the elite individuals. Whether you want to like it, agree with it, whatever, or not, that's what it is.
Sure.
The elite individuals are the show.
Yeah.
And the teams and the age groups, both teens and masters, are, I don't want to say a sideshow because that's not like an accurate representation, I'm thinking. It's also not a nice way to phrase it, but it's like that they're not the main event. They're the undercard.
Stop. Whether or not it's nice.
Okay. They're the sideshow. I'll say it. Fine.
Oh, well, so you just said they're not the main event. Well, if they're not the main event, they must therefore be.
All right. Gosh, geez. I'm trying to be nice over here. God.
And I respect that.
Because we're going to say a lot of stuff that's not as nice. But
okay, go ahead.
So the individuals are the main show. Age groups, teams, anything like that is a sideshow. It's not the main event. The individuals bring in the most money, the most sponsors, the most this, the most that. If CrossFit wanted to make the games a more profitable thing, like I've heard so many times how much money CrossFit used to lose on regionals and lose on the games, and probably still loses on the games. You stop losing that much money, and you maybe even make money if you get rid of all the extra stuff. Now you don't need the extra media people. You can just have your media people focusing on the main event, and you can have all of your resources that are needed put towards that. But then you don't need 72,000 judges because you've got 4 different venues going at the same time you can be maybe more creative in your programming because you're like, we have so much more space for the individuals. We don't have to cut things off and section things off because that's just what fits the timeline and the schedule and different venues and floors and whatnot. So I think from a business perspective, getting rid of anything that's not the elite individuals makes complete sense and would be a no-brainer move. On the other side of that coin is you're looking at it from the community aspect. And this comes back to something you had said a few episodes ago where I made a comment about that, like, hey, you can have another job or go to school and train a couple hours a day and make it to semifinals. And you said that's cool as long as CrossFit's good with being a backyard sport.
Yeah.
So you said that a few podcasts ago, and the same thing if we're looking at it from a community event and that's all that's important to us is hey, we're a community sport. We let everybody play. It doesn't matter what division you're in. You get to come to you get to have a seat at the table. Then fantastic. But I think you're going to have a really hard time professionalizing the sport of CrossFit into a legitimate sport and not just a backyard barbecue that got some flashy lights now.
Right. Yeah.
So I think you have a really hard time doing that if you keep that as a main portion of the thing.
Yeah. I mean, I can't argue. And that was the first thing that popped into my head. And since I heard that phrase, it has haunted me. Like, I look at the horse, we'll talk about this at some point. The shit with the grips. What the actual fuck?
They're just making shit up now.
I get what they're trying to do, but at the same time,
I
like,
don't. What like I so here's
I
the thing.
do.
I don't. So okay. Well, so I do, but I don't. Like
Right.
I get what they're trying to do. They're trying to remove any competitive advantage. Here's the fucking thing though. Again, when it comes to the sport of CrossFit, if me flopping a big ass piece of leather over the pull-up bar is going to allow me to hang on for 100 reps,
Yeah.
fucking do it, because you're going to watch someone in a games event that the chipper in the 2017 games, there was 100 pull-ups, 80 GHDs, 60 something like the little chipper. You're going to watch the top heat just going unbroken, and then it's just like, who can hang on? And everyone's on their seats like, oh my God, who's coming down off the bar first? Like, that would be amazing from a spectacle standpoint. Like, let people I want to watch someone do 30 unbroken muscle-ups because they slapped a big-ass piece of leather over those rings. Like, fuck it, man. Let people do the thing. If it allows them to express, because guess what? If they do 100 pull-ups unbroken, the thing that me as a coach and someone who enjoys human suffering would get from this is then the following event, you're fucked up. Because you did unbroken pull-ups. Then 2 hours later, when they're like climb a pegboard, you're like, it's like I fucking can't.
Dunzo.
I don't have any biceps left.
Right.
So that like from a spectacle, so I get when they're like remove competitive advantage, but then here's the thing: then just don't allow grips. If you're gonna be like, hey, we're gonna try and take. I know I said it. As someone who's an avid grip user, listen, I have a pair of Victory grips. They're the fingerless ones because I don't like the material on my fingers, but mine are sized appropriately. So they only hang over like the amount they're supposed to hang over. But it's like, I have grips. I use grips. I like grips.
Yeah.
But if you're going to say we're making this change to take away any competitive advantage, then don't allow grips.
Yeah.
Their whole thing with the belt during semifinals, where they're like 4-inch belt only. Listen,
except if your name is Tolamora Kenya.
So okay, yes, but so this is I just because it's on the desk. This is Jack's belt. So this is a Rogue belt that Rogue makes.
What's a 5-inch belt?
No, it's 4 inches on the side though. So this is 4 inches.
Yeah, that's what I meant.
This is 4 inches. This is 5 inches, like that just goes across your lower back.
Yeah.
Right. So this, per CrossFit Games rules or semifinals or whatever the fuck, this is not okay.
Yeah.
But guess who sponsors the CrossFit Games is this company called Two Food, and all they make are 4-inch belts. So weird how that works. But it's like this belt right here. If you're gonna say that going from here to here, you're like, no, that's a competitive advantage. Guess what? Don't allow belts. Like, I'll go you one better. Like, listen, if you're trying to remove competitive advantage from stuff, don't allow weightlifting shoes. Don't allow belts. Don't allow knee sleeves. Don't allow wrist straps. If you want to take away competitive advantage, bro, let's just raw dog this thing, man. Like, listen, I'm serious.
I can tell.
Because I'm like, if you're going to do that with one thing, you can't just be like, you can only wear grips that are a certain thing. And it's going to be the same thing as trying when you, like, we took a measurement from our wrist to our elbow divided by pi. Yep, wind's blowing west. Mercury's in lemonade. All right, this is your handstand push-up line. Same shit, different day. It's ridiculous. They're like, your grips can only hang over by this much. What judge is getting up on the bar and measuring from your fingertip to your grip, man? Like, I don't understand how they're planning to implement that or whatever. And it's not a thing about like, oh, well, now the athletes got sauce. I'm like, oh, well, now the athletes have to get all new grips. Sick, bro. They got to pay $30 for a new set of grips. I think they'll be all right. But it's like, if you're going to make that rule with one piece of equipment, you have to make it across the board. And if you're saying that all of this is under the guise of removing competitive advantage, then fully fucking remove competitive advantage. Take away anything that will make people more efficient, go faster, give them an edge. Take away lifters, knee sleeves, wrist straps. I was going to say take away thumb tape, but don't do that.
There's a line.
Don't do that. That crossed the line. But anyways, that's my whole thing. I just went off on a mega rant about the equipment thing, but that whole thing pissed me off with the grips. I'm like, either let them have competitive advantage and see who can do Fran in 60 seconds, or remove all the competitive advantage and see how we go. You can't toe the line on this one in my book.
Do you feel better now? Now that you got that out?
No, I don't feel better.
Also,
I'm still upset.
Bringing it back to masters athletes, So, so
They don't get to use grips either. No
they
grips for
don't get
anybody.
no grips for anybody. I get what you're saying about the cost, right? So Kevin's point
Yeah.
was like it costs money. I would wager that hosting the Masters and Teens costs more than those athletes generate by several multiples.
But yeah, by a lot.
Yeah, like maybe by a
Exponentially
factor of
so.
10 or something like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
And that's, I mean, from a business decision, like as a business decision, you draw the line at like, okay, if you want to increase profitability, there's a handful of ways to do that. Like you raise your prices or you cut your expenses, right? And anyone who's looked at games tickets knows that they're not exactly cheap already. So
Nope. Probably because they're trying to offset those things. Bro, the games are just hemorrhaging money. And at this point, when, for better or for worse, when Greg was at the helm, he really didn't give a fuck about the games that much. So he kind of just like,
true.
sure, whatever. But now that you have a board of investors that aren't CrossFit, or I shouldn't say aren't CrossFitters, there are parts
We don't
of
know.
them that do CrossFit, but
we don't know shit about the board.
I don't know if I can say that. Sammy babysits for a family, and
You can't say
dude,
anything.
Okay.
Yeah. Like,
anyway, someone knows something, but
yeah.
Anyways, it's so like there are some CrossFitters in the mix, I'm sure, but
sure, more than likely.
There most of them are just, hey, this is a business opportunity that we saw, so we jumped on it, and so they're trying to get their money out of it.
Absolutely.
It's become a lot more businessy in the past few years since Greg sold it, and that's why.
Yeah.
So you see the games tickets go up, all that fun stuff, because they're trying to recoup whatever losses from the games.
Well, and then we get to this whole backyard sport comment, right? Like at the Olympics, there are no masters divisions. At the Olympics, there's not a teenage division. I mean, there's nationals, there's, country championships, there's individual competitions, specialized competitions.
There's youth national championships.
There's youth national championships. There's youth world championships, but they are not the Olympics. Totally separate ballgame. Now, the other thing that could be said is the Olympics only happens every 4 years. And countries that host plan a decade in advance. Like, it's not a lightweight thing. And so, when, and that's, and you can say whatever you want about how, like, wasteful the Olympics can be, and certainly that argument can be made. But in terms of professionalizing the sport of CrossFit, I mean, in order to be successful, we might have to not be able to use the word CrossFit. Like you have to take it away from the brand and give it to an international governing body so that one brand's interests aren't the thing that drives it, I think that I don't know, and I'll be the first to say that I'm ignorant about a lot of things. And so if someone wants to come back and say like, no, this is how you could do it, then fine, please educate me. Right. I don't know, with the acumen that I have currently, that you could grow the event and grow the sport internationally and continue to host masters or teens.
Yeah, that'd be real rough. And the thing is, like, I mean, I'll throw this out there, and this might be a real hot take, but I'll say it. No, listen.
Didn't say anything.
I'm feeling feisty. I'm caffeinated. I've been up since 4. I'm ready.
Let's go.
Let's go. I don't like the teenage divisions, like having kids that young competing in CrossFit. I don't like
the 14, 15s.
Even the 16, 17. I don't like that. Just because you start competing at, your good example, Olivia Kerstetter, who is a human weapon.
Absolutely.
Infinitely fitter than I ever was, am, or will be.
Combined.
Yeah, all combined. And she was fitter than me when she was like 11.
Yeah.
But you have these, and I think we're going to start to see, now that you have these athletes that started off so young.
Yeah.
You have Olivia Kerstetter, you have like Mal O'Brien,
Haley Adams.
You had Angela DeChico, you had what was the other guy's name?
Sam Kwan.
Nick something.
Palladino.
That one. So you have like these athletes that they've been training for this since they were 11.
Yeah.
So they're just under load, intensity,
They're a
volume.
decade deep already.
They're a decade deep by the time they're 20.
Yeah.
And then they sit there, it's like, we don't know what kind of repercussions. And listen, CrossFit implemented well is safe and effective in the whole thing.
Yeah.
That's not competitive CrossFit. Competitive CrossFit is not sustainable. And I don't care who you are or what you think, it's not. There's nobody, not a human on this planet that's like, yep, I'm going to be 100% healthy after training 5 hours a day for 30 years. There's a reason, there's a timestamp on how long professional athletes of any sport can compete because it takes a toll on your body. It's not sustainable. So, and this type of training, this sport is more physically demanding across the board. I'm not saying there aren't other sports that are physically demanding.
Sure.
But is more physically demanding across all domains, modalities, and whatnots than any other sport on the planet, because most other sports involve a high element of skill.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say, for an example, you're a
specific
soccer player,
to the sport.
Exactly. So let's say, for example, as a soccer player, you need to be able to handle the ball, pass, shoot, all that fun stuff. But you can work on that, and you do work on that through practice, which is very low heart rate and working on quality of stuff. And that's not super damaging. You still need to be fit. But when your entire sport is just being fit, the amount of
there's never
load,
a fit
volume,
enough.
intensity, exactly. There's never a fit enough. It's not like, you can't be like, for a soccer player, again, like in the off season, be like, no, I have my off season. I'm just going to work on my passing technique. And, 3 to 4 sessions a week, I'm just working passing. I get like maybe a little run in there, here and there, but it's like relatively light. And I get back into preseason, things ramp up. Guess what, homie? You're doing CrossFit. You finish the CrossFit games. Sunday night, you have yourself a pizza and a Ben and Jerry's. Day 1 of preseason starts Monday, and if you're smart,
like that, for sure.
If you're smart, you don't do that. But there's no point during the year which competitive CrossFit athletes aren't trying to push their fitness farther.
Yeah.
And so it's like, it's just that the toll of that extrapolated out over a decade put on a 13-year-old is like, I don't like where in my head I see that path going, because now you've got so many of those younger athletes, and I hope this doesn't happen to Olivia, but you've seen Mal and Haley both pull out of the games this year, out of competing, because they're like, we can't. Like, we just had to take some time off. And, you don't pry. It's their story to tell, but there's something either mentally, physically, emotionally that was going on there that, in combination with the sport or because of the sport, forced them to have to withdraw. And they're still so young. And, it's like, to be, I don't want to say it, but like, to be broken that young in life is tragic to me. It's like, you have the whole rest of your life that you could be doing stuff, and then you see now where you're looking competitive CrossFit athletes where it's like, Josh Bridges has had both knees done. Dan Bailey's had one knee done twice. Rich has had a knee done. Ben's had a shoulder done and a knee done. It's like, they've all had to have corrective and reconstructive surgeries on major joints just because of the amount of load and volume and intensity over decades that they've done. And these are full grown, fully formed, athletically capable, like they played sports all the way through high school, college, whatever. It's not like they just came from, nowhere, but they're like fully formed, capable, full grown adults trying to take on that volume, and they're wrecked.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't think, I did not like when the games put forth the teen division. Not that they can't do impressive things, because watching a 17-year-old snatch more than I can deadlift is wild. But
Yeah.
What does that look like when that 15-year-old is now 22?
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah.
So I don't like that. So that's my first thing is I don't like the teen aspect.
Yeah.
But
I mean, there's a lot of things to be weighed here, you know. And how far do you go, and how far do you insert? I'm speaking as CrossFit, the governing body. Like, how far do you go? How far do you insert yourself into the life trajectory of another human being? Do you care to do that? Is it in congruence or in conflict with the organization's mission statement, goals, values, both financially and not? You know, there's that's a really, really hard needle to thread, I think. And you solve a lot of problems just by eliminating it, right? Obviously. Now, I'm an all or nothing dude when it comes to a lot of things, and not necessarily healthy in a healthy manner in my life, right?
Yeah.
And so, like, learning balance is something I'm very, very mindful of. Providing guidance, right? And a path potentially towards professional, operating as a professional in the sport can be an amazing opportunity for teenagers, right? And doing so in a way that is encouraging and not limiting, you know, like, I mean, I don't know how any other teenager was, but when I was 15, I thought I had the whole fucking world figured out. I thought literally every other human was an idiot. And like, I imagine that by dint of the kind of work that CrossFit teens do, they learn a bunch of lessons sooner. Hard work, grit, resilience, things like that. But it doesn't change the fact that your prefrontal cortex isn't fully formed and won't be for another 5 years, right? So you are not physically, physiologically, or neurologically capable of potentially grasping the concepts or grasping the future consequences of the decisions that you're making right now. And if you are no more adept at looking into the future than any other human that I know of. And quick note about, like, you know, Ben Smith getting a shoulder and a knee done. It's not because Ben Smith is an idiot and like moves like dog shit.
Ben's one of the best movers in the sport.
Absolutely. One of my favorite lines from Austin years ago on the CrossFit podcast. He's talking about, you know, and it was Sevon who ran the old CrossFit podcast.
Yeah.
And he's interviewing him and he's saying, you know, like, what's it like? How do you feel? And he's just like, I'm in pain. He's like, really? You know, like, nobody talks about that. He's like, and Austin says, everybody at an elite level in any sport is in pain all the time. And in CrossFit especially, because it's not like I play a different position on a team. So like a kicker and a linebacker are in different amounts of pain, right? Everybody in CrossFit's catching heavy cleans, doing high volume work, you know, toasting their CNS and their aerobic system. Like, it just is it's the nature of the thing that we do. Oh, hey. Sam Hornstein's calling me. Shout out Sam Hornstein. Hi, Sam. I will call you later. And so I like the idea of, I would be interested to see like what someone at CrossFit said about this kind of thing. It would give us a big clue into like what the trajectory of the organization and the competition is. I want to get off this topic real quick, and I want to go to the other part, which was the cuts, right? So, specifically the elite individuals and also teams, I believe, but specifically elite individuals are like, I think they get to Friday and they lose a bunch.
Cut down to 30. Yeah. And then after Friday, they cut to 20 for the weekend.
Exactly. And so some people, and the comments that were made to me were like, well, that's not fair. And my first response was, fucking says who? Like,
life's not fair.
I'm pretty sure CrossFit can do whatever they want at the CrossFit Games. And so, and And I'm also pretty sure that they have the phrase unknown and unknowable fucking trademarked. So like,
Yeah.
this shouldn't
Yeah.
be shocking a little bit.
But also every year that they introduce cuts and they as soon as it gets posted on, nice, more caffeine.
This is not caffeine. This is O2, but still.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. Every time there's an Instagram post or they announce the cut schedule.
Yeah.
I just immediately, I see the post.
Scroll.
I see the post. I see the post. Put my phone down for a second. Go into the kitchen. Make a big ass bowl of popcorn.
Yes.
Bring that thing back to the couch. All right. Click the comments button. Let's see where we got.
Refresh.
And oh my gosh. And everyone loses their mind. And I understand where people are coming from. Again,
Yes.
It comes back to the concept of the backyard sport. We just let everybody play. And I get when someone's like, yep, like they work so hard to get there, to get cut on Friday. And I'm like, have you ever seen the Jamaican bobsled team at the Olympics?
Yeah. Right.
Want to know why? Because they show up for their first trial run and they go, nope, too slow, done.
Yeah.
Disqualified, done. They didn't even get to race on race day. And they're like, well, shit. All right, then try again 4 years from now.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's just it. But no one loses their mind. And I think the reason why is because we have such a community-driven sport and people form connections to these athletes. They feel connected to them. They identify with so-and-so an athlete.
Yeah.
That they get really upset when anything happens that goes against it. Like I can only imagine the amount of comment whatevers. I didn't read it, but like when Danny Spiegel didn't qualify for the games, I can only imagine how upset some people were. Well, this event was stupid and it was her judge's fault. And let's never mind the fact that she didn't get below parallel on her overhead squats. Said what I said.
Yeah.
You know,
spade a spade.
Listen, her best overhead squats look like my best power snatches, baby.
And it's not like she can't. We talked about this. We know she can overhead squat. She's got the range of motion.
Yeah.
She rode the line, got bit by the lightning.
Yep. And so it's like people get upset about it. And so the same thing is like maybe someone, you have a favorite athlete, and you're like, I'm not sure they're going to be in that top 20 on Saturday. This is stupid. I don't like it. It's not fair.
Yeah.
Like they've worked so hard. It's like, yes, they've worked so hard. It doesn't change the fact that this is a sport and there's competitive things. And the best argument I've heard, and I'd love to hear your take on this, is that if you kept all 40, right? You keep all 40 athletes the entire way through the weekend.
Okay.
Every event or so, like there might be like one or two events where you have the person in 40th that like takes 5th in that event because they just big dick that thing and they smash it. And that
Sam
shuffles
Dancer.
the leaderboard. Yeah. You have a Sam Dancer that, he's in 36 and then they're like, all right, gang,
Step to the bar.
Yeah. We're doing, it's 5 reps for time, touch and go power cleans at 405. And Sam's like,
let's go.
Got this, baby.
Big dog's going to eat.
Exactly. But you have something where like just something lines up and it just, all their strengths and they just like, let me just crank this soft pitch out of the park.
Right.
So someone that's in that bottom 10 can shuffle up the points for that event towards the top. And someone's like, well, that wouldn't happen. And it's like, okay, sure. When that happens, it takes Saxon Panchik from 8th to 9th overall.
Right.
It doesn't change the fact that Sam Dancer is still going to finish 36 at the games.
Yeah.
It takes Saxon from like 8th to 9th in that event, but doesn't change his placing over. When you're that late in the weekend on Sunday, you're not really seeing like that massive of shifts going on there. And if you do, it's because the person in 20th took like 3/3 in a row and hopped himself from 20th to like 12th.
Right.
It's not because the person in 37th took a 5th once and then shuffled the whole and then ruined Matt Fraser's day.
Right.
So that's the one like semi-decent argument I've heard is people being like, hey, the people there towards the bottom of the thing can still like, do some damage towards the top and throw some wrenches.
Yeah.
I don't know if you think that's a legitimate, argument, answer, whatever, but
Well, I think that it's based in statistics, and you'd have to argue against math if you wanted to argue against that. So like, so there's this is the micro argument, but then there's a macro argument. And I'll come out to that in a second. So the micro argument, I agree entirely. And statistically, we've seen this. We see the same people in the fucking top 10, with a little bit
All
of
the time.
shuffle, like all the time. Like if there was some, like, Noah Olson, how many times has he been in the top 10?
every single, all but one CrossFit Games.
Exactly. Like, you're gonna see the same people because the same people are doing the things that they need to do, right? Like they're the people for a reason. Everyone else are the people that beat the people. They're like the winners of the group who aren't quite good enough. And like, that's not to disparage the fact that, like, if you make it to fucking semifinals, you're a unit. Absolutely.
A human weapon.
Without a doubt, right?
Yeah.
But if you're at semifinals, right, and you place 6th, and they're taking 5 humans, sorry, bro, your season's over, right? And if you then,
but also
of those,
like that person that finished sixth, like that is a CrossFit Games level athlete. If you're finishing in the top 10 at semifinals,
absolutely,
you're good enough to be at the CrossFit Games.
Sure.
It just didn't play out for you on that weekend.
Right. And this is a really, really important thing. Like, we can like armchair quarterback this whole thing all that we want, but like, if you're taking 6th at semifinals, you're good enough to be at the games, right? However, good enough to be at the games does not mean good enough to place in the top half or in the top 10 or in the top 5 or win, right?
Right.
And I think that because we've seen the names that we've seen win or do well consistently, that is borne out statistically, right? So I absolutely buy the fact that, like, they're not going to change it. Like, we're not going to see something shocking unless, and I'm not going to wish this on anybody, so I'm not going to say it out loud, but like, there would have to be something major that is not predictable that would to have something be a big shuffle. Now let's step out. Let's look at the bigger issue. Let's go back to that 6th place guy from semifinals. That dude worked real hard. That dude trained like a motherfucker. His diet, his sleep, his recovery is on point. He might have just stepped wrong, misplaced a foot, or had his body in the wrong position to receive a clean, and so had to dump it. And
took one extra swipe of chalk.
Absolutely. Right?
Seconds count,
So here's my thing, right?
Is
his cut, because he was cut, right? He didn't do good enough, and they said, here's the line, and so you don't get to go forward and keep playing. Is his cut less important or valuable or anything else than a person who is cut later? And why is it a big deal, and why is it totally acceptable to have cuts? Because that's what they functionally are at the Open, at quarterfinals, and at semifinals. But, oh, no, not at the games. No, at the games, like, everyone has to get a chance to do everything, and everybody gets a participation trophy. The fuck you do. Like, you are entitled to nothing. And if CrossFit teaches you anything, it's you are entitled to nothing. Like, you got to go out. Like, the people who are going to be in the top 20 at that weekend, there is a reason that I want to say it was, what's the big bald guy who, games announcer?
Sean Woodland.
Thank you, Sean Woodland. One of the best lines he ever had is, you don't know how good you have to be just to suck at the CrossFit Games, right? And so then take that. Like, you have to be so fucking amazing just to suck. How much more good do you have to be in the top 10? That shit's not accidental, right? And so for me, like, the games aren't paying their way. Well, no fucking shit. They have it every year, and the games isn't going to pay your way because they have it every year, and they're footing the bill for Masters, and they're footing the bill for teens, and they've got a giant, like, fucking party basically going on at 4 different locations for 6 days nonstop, right? They don't have the money. This isn't the Olympics. It doesn't happen once a year. We don't have whole countries with a significant portion of their GDP that is being spent to send a team of individuals with the hope of winning a gold medal. That's not happening. We're not there yet.
Right. No.
So, do I give a shit about the cuts? Absolutely not. 1, because it's not going to matter. And then 2, more importantly, like, if you're telling me that these cuts over here are more severe than these cuts, like, you're doing some fucking mental gymnastics that I cannot follow,
Yeah. I mean, it'd be interesting because I've seen this a lot is like where they're like, we should take one normal person and put them in the Olympics just so you can see how fucking good Olympic athletes are compared to regular people. Because again, it's the same thing in CrossFit, right? You have a person that finishes first, person that finishes 40th at the CrossFit Games. You're like, wow, they're on such a different fucking planet. Go work out with that 40th place person once.
One time.
They can do Fran 3 times in the time it takes you to finish your set of 21.
Right?
It's not even close. It's ridiculous how good these people are. I mean, me trying to work out with someone who went to semifinals 4 years ago, and they've since retired from competitive CrossFit. I'm like, fuck, dude, you're so fit.
I know.
It's insane how good people are and how fit people are. And so I think that should be the move for CrossFit. Take some normal, just like a random number generator. Pick, I don't know, 10 people from the open. And just chuck them at the CrossFit Games and just see what happens. Dude. Oh my gosh. I would say that they'd pick me, right? I'd get there. I'd show up at the games. They'd be like, all right, so here's what we're going to do, gang. You're going to chuck a ruck on and some ankle weights, and you're going to handstand walk 50 feet across some parallettes. And then once you get there, you're going to do some freestanding parallel handstand push-ups with a pirouette on top onto a pair of rings. And I'm going to sit there and be like, nope. Couldn't be me.
So we actually don't even need to do anything that crazy.
It'd be fun to watch. It'd probably really put into perspective for people just how good you have to be at the games. Yeah. Take the fittest person at your gym, whoever finished first in the open, and because every gym has one of these where you have your one athlete, they smash the open, they finish top at your gym, and everyone's like, look at what Doug did. Right. Like, what a human weapon, what a unit. Take Doug, put him at the CrossFit Games, have him line up next to Brent Fikowski and Tim Paulson, and I'm trying to think of, Matt Fraser, whoever, during the clean ladder that ended at 350.
I know.
Like, homie, I would
sprint clean ladder.
What did that start off? That started off the ladder that went, because it was like 4 bar muscle ups, 2 cleans, and it started at something and it ended at 350 for the men. It was 2017 games. I can't remember what it started at. It started at like 275 or 285. I'm like, listen, I can maybe clean that first bar on a real good fucking day if the stars align and everything's good. I know you're looking it up right now.
I am looking it up.
285. That's my guess.
Muscle up clean ladder, 8 rounds for time, 4 bar muscle ups, 2 cleans, ascending weight.
Cleans. Yeah.
Cleans were, I'm going to do male weights only because I'm lazy.
Okay.
In order, 225, 245, 265, 285, 305, 320, 355.
Jesus.
Oh, no. 320, 335, 350. Sorry.
Okay. I was going to say 320 to 350. I was like, oh, that's a fucking jump. Strap your double belt on, big boys. Let's go. But if you put me at that clean ladder, I'll hit the 225. 245, we're okay. 265, we're starting to get iffy. What was the next one? 285? Yeah. So next one, 285. Is your sound's doing something weird. Anyways, I'm making it to I don't know, 285 on that on a good day. If it's everything worked great and we're good to go. And then after that 285 clean, I've got nothing left. I'm just deadlifting. I'm like, that bar looks amazing on the floor as it is. I'm just going to leave it because it looks great. So it's wild how good these athletes are. And you know, another thing that people kind of need to wrap their heads around, I guess, or maybe just, sit back and reflect a little bit, is that out of, I think this year is, you're muted, unmute yourself. So I believe, if I'm not mistaken, I could be entirely wrong, but I'm pretty sure this is the 18th CrossFit Games. So if this is the 18th, 16th, it's an even number, I think. So 16th or 18th CrossFit Games, whatever number we're on, out of that number, 16 or 18, 11 CrossFit Games have featured some sort of cut structure at the games. I mean, that's so much more than half, but people have such a small window of memory for the games and for think that they're like, oh, well, this is ridiculous. It's like, well, guess what? There were cuts in the 2020 games. They did an online portion. Guess what, homies? You didn't finish top 5. You don't get to go to Aromas and compete. But that was fine. You did the 2020 games online. If you did the online portion, you got your games jersey, you got your special shorts and shoes and gear from the games mailed to you, all good to go. You completed the online portion, your scores didn't stack up. Guess what? You didn't get to play. You didn't get to continue with the group. So
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. You're very echoey, but I can hear you. So it's like there's cuts right there. The 2019 games was infamous for the cuts because they invited everyone and their fucking mom to the CrossFit Games, which I get what they were trying to do, was trying to globalize the sport. Everyone's national champion gets to come and play. But then, they did one event and they cut the field in half from, I think it was like 130 some odd athletes to like 80.
Yeah.
Just cut the field in half. Boom, done. Next event, they did the same thing, cut the field in half from, it might have been from like 80 to 60 or something. And so over the course of those two events, like, you'd be very hard pressed to say that those two events aren't CrossFit. You had it's 4 rounds, 3 legless rope climbs, 400 meter run, 3 legless rope climbs, 7 squat snatches. Beautiful workout. It's terrible. If you've never done it, do it. Hate yourself. But a great event, pure CrossFit. We've seen a barbell. We've done some gymnastic stuff. We've run the whole thing. Good to go. Next event was the row, kettlebell push press, and handstand walk.
Right.
So it was just one time through. The row was 600 meters. I think it was 60. I don't know. It was something. We double kettlebell push press and then handstand walk. Again, little triplet, little sprint.
Yeah.
We've hit long domain. We've hit short domain so far of like mixed modal workouts. The next event, I believe, was the ruck run, if I'm not mistaken. So you do the ruck run, off we go. They made another cut after that. I think they did another event. I can't remember what it was. Then the following event was a sprint event. And the only argument people had is like, well, we've run 3 times. Like, if you're a good runner, then that's why we got the top 10 we had. I'm like, that's not what happened there. Like,
Right.
They hit. I get what people are saying when they're like, we've run 3 times. It's biased towards running. Well,
Right.
It's also really hard to bring 170 fucking rowers out onto the floor to make that happen. There's limits to what you can do with the 150 people that were there.
Yeah.
And everyone was it's amazing how global the sport's become, and we love it, and it's so inclusive and phenomenal. And then everyone got cut. People are like, well, them getting cut's not fair. They are coming all this way, and I'm sitting there, I'm like, listen, I understand someone came all this way, they've worked hard, they won the Open for their country, and they qualified for the CrossFit Games. They knew well in advance that cuts are happening. So when they paid for their trip and they ponied up and they made their way, they knew what was coming.
Yeah.
They get there. The event gets announced. The amount of people in that first heat because they essentially did 3 heats of like 60 people to get through everyone for both men and women. The amount of people, both men and women, in that first heat that could not do a single legless rope climb.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, you're not good enough to be at the games. Like, that's just, you're just not there yet. And again, you earned your spot, you punched your ticket, you're representing your country, and I think that's amazing. However, when you get punched in the face with this is the level you're at and you can't do it, you as an athlete, have 2 choices. You can either feel sorry for yourself. I'm never competing again. Fuck CrossFit. Fuck all this noise. I hate everything and this is stupid. Or you can be like, all right, I've got 1 year and I'm going to be fucking ready for next time. Like, those are the 2 ways you're going to think about it. And so with the cuts happening this year, people are like, well, that's not fair. The people are going to go, they're not going to get it. Again, when you show up at the games and you get punched in the face with this is the level and you're not quite there, athletes, even receiving the news that there's going to be cuts, me as a competitor, immediately my brain would go to, what do I need to do to make sure I'm in that top 20?
Yep.
And here's what needs to happen perfectly for me to get there. And if I can't make that happen, if I finish 31st and I get cut in the first round, absolutely, you're going to take some time to feel sorry for yourself. You're disappointed your season ended earlier than you wanted it to. I fully get that. That's part of the emotional roller coaster that is sports. Anyone that has played a sport, you've been on that roller coaster at least once.
Yes.
But once that happens and you either get cut at the games or, whatever, if something happens, same thing as the guy that gets cut at semifinals. He finishes 6th. He's gutted. He probably goes home and he spends the next 2 weeks consuming nothing but Hershey's and Ben & Jerry's, just feeling sorry for yourself.
Don't project yourself onto this other person's life.
Okay. I finished 6th at semifinals. I just go drown myself in Ben & Jerry's. But,
and Hershey's.
Yeah, and Hershey's. But after that, it's like you have a choice as an athlete. You can either say, fuck all this, I'm done. Or you can be like, all right, back to training, back to the drawing board. Here's what I need to do to make sure this doesn't happen again.
Right.
And you make yourself better. And that's the difference between, like, a true competitor is going to choose the latter. Someone who's like, if they're truly committed to it and they're like, I'm in it and I'm competitive and I want it. What do I need to do for next time to make sure this doesn't happen? And you're going to let that fuel you the entire thing, right? I mean, look at, we've all seen the games documentary with Fraser with the pig. That pig fucked up his life in the 2015 games. The day after the games, he bought a pig. And then he's been consistent with this on CrossFit podcasts, on the Nutriforce video series that he did with it. And then like the Road to the Games videos, he was like, I bought a pig after the games and I flipped that bitch 60 to 100 times every day. Pretty much for the past year, to the point where he was like, he had to go to the doctor because he thought he had boxer fractures in his hands from flipping the pig so much.
Wow.
And he was like, that's how, because he'll never let it happen again. Rich Froning fell off the rope in 2011. He did rope climbs every day until he was the best fucking rope climber in the games. And then guess what? This is probably something Dave did because this is how Dave is the first event of the 2012 games was rope climbs. And so Rich went in, he won that event. He was like, I'll never let that be a weakness ever again. That's what it is. If you want to win and you're going to be competitive, like if something happens that didn't go to plan and what you wasn't great for you, you get cut on the first day. What do I need to do over the course of the next 364 days to make sure that never happens again?
Well,
and,
I think
for the athletes that choose to not, go ahead.
Well, no, go ahead. Finish your thought.
I was gonna say, for the athletes that choose to not do that, where they're like, I'm just done competing, then that's absolutely fine. But it's not CrossFit's fault. Like, don't blame CrossFit. Don't blame the cuts. Don't blame external circumstances or whatever that wasn't in your control on you not wanting to continue. Because if you wanted to continue, you would. If you don't want to continue or something like that's going to derail you, then get out of the sport anyways.
Yeah. Well, I think at the end of the day, like, we can feel however we want about this as spectators, right? And a lot of we can ask ourselves, like, where is this coming from? Why do I feel like this? Why do I care so much about the outcomes of a person who I have never met before, right? Most of us have never met the people we're rooting for.
Right.
And that's a thing that we can look into. At the end of the day, though, CrossFit's going to do CrossFit, and
Mhm.
I don't. I like that people are excited about Don Fall. Um, I think nobody should be surprised about CrossFit doing what is in CrossFit's best interests. Um, just because of the circumstances that we're in right now.
Yep.
So functionally for me, cuts totally fine with that, right?
Yep.
And
I'm down with it.
you want to, yeah, like you want to get upset about how things are done. That's fine, but like, is that a productive use of your time? And you get to decide how you want to spend your time. Everybody does. That's a
Mhm.
fantastic thing, human autonomy. Woo. I don't, yeah, like, but at the same time, like, is that productive? Could you
Yeah.
be doing something different? Could you be doing something more effective with your time? And almost certainly the answer is yes. And we've seen plenty of examples. Another one that was in my head was Katrin Davidsdottir, right? Like
Yeah.
on the floor at regionals
Yep.
during that, after that
Devastating.
legless rope climb, like
Devastating. Yeah.
but fuck it, it's awful to watch. And wasn't it
Yeah.
the next year that she won?
Yes. So that was the 2014 regionals, the sprint rope climb event that just like
Right.
demolished your entire. It was like one legless rope climb, 100-foot sprint, 10 rounds.
Yep. Yep.
And so she did that event, and she got a handful of things in. She couldn't get back up the rope. Like she just could
Yeah.
not get the rope climbs done. So that
Yeah.
plummeted her way down the leaderboard. And I think that legless rope climb run in 2014 was the last event. So I
Something
think
like
she was
that.
she was in a games qualifying position. That
Yeah.
event happens, and
Yeah.
then it done. And so, absolutely devastating. But she, seeing her on the, like, she's upset on the floor. The athletes are trying to like make her feel better. In the back area, there's videos of that during documentaries and stuff.
Sure.
Then the next year, the literal next year,
Yeah.
she wins the CrossFit Games.
So I don't know that you could have, Rich would be the equivalent, a
Yep.
clearer example of you get to do whatever you want with how you feel about certain things.
Yep.
And there is productive and non-productive applications for that time.
Yep.
We could spend a lot more time going down this rabbit hole. Unfortunately, we're a little bit over an hour right now. So let's call this discussion. Let's put a nice, pretty bow on it. Final thoughts, questions, concerns about Masters or cuts at the games, Mr. Kevin?
The Masters divisions are incredibly fun to watch. I mean, some of the most fun events I've ever seen were the few far in between of the ones that were covered at the CrossFit Games. But watching those Masters events are fun. I've never had more fun than we watched an event. It was at the 2021 Games. It was when James was competing. But we watched the deadlift and rope climb event, and it had various loadings for the age groups and various levels of like height of the rope and legless or legged, whatever it is.
Right.
But we watched the 65 plus age division rip that workout, and they're like 65-year-old dudes that were and ladies that were just ripping. But for the sake of the example, 65-year-old dudes just ripping 265 deadlifts and rope climbs, and I was like, what a bunch of savages. And we had the most fun. We were watching them go. There was like a sprint to the finish, and we're like, go, get it. We're cheering, screaming our heads off in the office. We had so much fun watching the 65 plus division. It was great. So it's a phenomenal division. Again, don't take anything that we've said in this podcast to say that like these people don't deserve to work out or they don't deserve to be able to compete, because anyone should be able to compete. But from a business perspective, it might behoove CrossFit to remove all the extra divisions to push the business and the sport forward. And there might just need to be a different solution for those age group divisions. So that's my final thought on that. The Masters are fun. If you want to remove competitive advantage, raw dog some workouts. Just your compression shorts and hopes and dreams.
Well, we're going to have to come back to that one. All right. Thank you, everybody, for joining us here in the Talking Average Fitness podcast. And
We will see you next week. Take care, everybody.